So, put in perspective, family. There's this kid in the Bronx. Loved his mom and dad, had family, did some pretty good things. So there's heavenly choreography going. And the gods meet and say, look, that Santiago kid is on his way to BYU.
It was years later.
Yeah, but he's gone. That was years later. And he says, the Castellano girl has lost her father. And maybe they'd be a good pair. So the Bronx guy winds up, are you listening, family, to a rodeo queen. Okay? Now you say anything you want, but I say to you, thank you, God.
Wait, so when you were in Manhattan,
Yeah.
how did you learn about BYU?
Because all the guys in the Manhattan ward and women, most of them, unless they were residents, they were practically all graduate students. And one of the closest was Robert K. Thomas, who eventually became, he was at Columbia, he became the vice president of BYU. And just David John, another scriptorian, and they were there, and they were the people I hung out with.
Who was Janie?
Janie was Janie Thompson. Janie Thompson is a legend at BYU. She's the one that came up with the Lamanite Generation, a musical group, and she was there on sabbatical, and we arranged to go up to the Sacred Grove with this group and slept over at Joseph Smith Barn. I mean, I got the whole package. They were so good in trying to get me to get into the cultural thing. And finally they said BYU is an answer. You need to go back. And Jenny was part of the faculty there. So she was just a friend and a musician, obviously, and she wanted me to be part of the singing some of those groups and that, but it was a wonderful time. I was embraced. It was family. It wasn't just the church. It was friends. So they just brought me along, and we left and headed for BYU. I wrote a letter to BYU, and they, like I said, they accepted everyone in those days, everyone. Even the GED people. And I got this letter, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the kid from the Bronx is admitted to Brigham Young University. And I'm like, what now? So I was taking classes, so I wouldn't have to take dumbbell English. And the first lesson I learned, quickly, was when I found this place to live, and I was roomed with 6 to 8 guys in one bathroom, and we were having dinner one night, and they said, we have a guest, and the guest, it came because the owner of the place, her sister or something with the ownership, and this girl walks in.
The people that owned the home, excuse me, had invited me down for dinner. They had a daughter my same age, and we were friends. Anyway, she said, well, why don't you stay for dinner, and gave me 18 plates. And I said, what on earth? And she says, well, we're doing room and board, and we have these other BYU students coming. And so we were sitting around the table and introducing ourselves, and I was one horribly homesick girl. I'd never been off the farm. And my father just died. In fact, I said to my mother, why don't I give up my scholarship and I'll stay a year and we'll get on our feet. you need my help? And she's absolutely not. She says, you go. You must go. So as we were introducing ourselves around the table, they were from all over the United States, Canada, from all over. And so when it was my turn to introduce myself, I told them where I was from, Twilla, Utah. And they said, well, where is that? And I said, oh, it's about 75 miles from here. And one of the guys said to me, well, if you are so homesick, why don't you just walk home?
Smart aleck Bronx kid.
And that was my introduction when I really started to notice this guy. After dinner, everyone went out to their separate places, and Frank stayed to help do dishes. And at that time, BYU had a lot of dances and
Yeah.
fun things for freshmen. After the dinner and the dishes were done, my friend and I walked up to BYU campus and went to the dance. But in the meantime, I said to my roommates, I met these guys, and I'll be glad to introduce you to them, but not to one of them. He's mine. And
What can I say?
oh, come on. You know, you hear about love at first sight. It was kind of like that for both of us. We connected that very first night. We
Yes.
dated for a long time. But what I loved about Frank right from the start was we held hands, but there was never any outward physical, like you see in movies and stuff, that, he was just always this gentleman. He'd only just hold my hand. And
I
we dated.
I was very shy, believe it or not, and I never had a girlfriend. I went out with some pretty nice girls, but I never had a girlfriend. So a relationship was new. Okay, that was new.
We were so lucky because at BYU, I joined some service organizations. And at that time, BYU had assemblies, they had dances, they had all kinds of activities. It was one step up at the time, kind of like in a high school, where ball games and everything. And when I were in these units, I would have to spend some time selling the tickets. And if you did that, you got free tickets. And so Frank and I went to everything free. We didn't have a car. In those days, you didn't have cars. We walked everywhere. Even to formal dances, we walked. And everything was free because I worked through the social units and got free tickets. And we had the most glorious courtship ever because we were able to go to all the activities at BYU. We went to the assemblies, we went to the devotionals, and we dated for 3 years doing that. First time I'd ever gone with a boy that said, let's have prayer after. Because farm boys aren't usually that spiritual. But he was a new convert, and oh, was he all in. And after our date, we'd have a prayer, which was so unique to me. Very considerate, pulled me through some hard times after the death of my father, and was very loving and kind and gentle, and fell in love with his kindness and his spirituality. Oh my, he was so in.
Well, it was just so fluid. It just seemed to work, She brought this church thing with her, who she is. So she's just a believer in the gospel, I should say. That's who she is. That's who she was. And I'm just learning, and I'm still learning. But our relationship was a special time.
We dated for a long time before, and we were down in the basement of Heritage House where I lived for 3 years with the same roommates for 3 years. We were just the dearest of friends. And in Heritage Halls, there's a basement, and we would always go there and study and everything. And I went into my dorm to get something, and I turned around to get something, and he just kind of leaned down and gave me a kiss. Do you remember what you said after you kissed me? Oh, I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, that's the truth. And I didn't plan anything. I mean, she was by those steps, and she happened to turn around, and there she was. Now, I'm a Bronx kid. I may be shy, but I'm not stupid. And so she just, so she turned and she was right there. And so I did my thing.
And then you said,
I wasn't planning. I was sincere.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
I apologize.
And we dated, and like I said, we had the most marvelous 3 years dating with everything we could possibly enjoy on campus, but neither one of us had money behind us. We decided after 3 years we could make it our final year, and Frank worked from 4 in the morning till 8. He had a BYU job cleaning, and I would work from noon until 4 as a secretary. We worked it together. It was never a question, well, let's wait until we've got good jobs. Let's wait till we graduate and we've got a big job and big money. It was, we'll try it. We can make it. When he was a freshman, he went into a jewelry store at Provo, and there was a contest to buy rings, diamonds. If you named the ring, and it was a good name and it was the best one, you could buy that ring for something like $200. This ring right here. And with his $110, somehow he got to buy that ring, and he paid for 3 years on that ring with his $110. We had made dear friends, the Rices, Bill and Joan Rice, and that day we went and played golf, and we had the fun time, and the whole time he was so nervous, and he kept saying, Bill, are you sure that car's locked? And yeah, everything's fine, Frank. And he said, well, we better go check and see. And he kept going back to the car and checking, and he was so nervous the whole day. And anyway, after we finished our double date and we changed clothes, he said, well, let's go for a walk on campus. And so we walked around, and up on that hill there was a
On your way
yard
to
light.
the Major building, yeah.
A yard light and a bench. And he said that, this place will always be here. And he said, I want it to be a special place for us. And he said, will you marry me? And he had his arms around me, and he had the diamond, and so this yard light was sparkling on his face, because it was this way, and I knew what was coming.
Very dramatic.
Yeah, you were. Anyway, he asked me to marry him, and that place is still there, and 41 years later, he said, let's go back and see where that place is still there. And he gave me this ring for our 41st anniversary. And so 64 years later, he's still a romantic guy.
I think that the posterity, and I hope my kids know, that above all, Frank and Ella represent just pure love. They love, and it's not just a word to them. It's an action.
And I'll share this with you. In their email address is frankandella@gmail.com. And they will often sign any note they send us, Frank and Ella, no spaces. And it's one of those things where we just say, this is such a depiction of who they are, such a great example. No spacing in the words. They are unified in word, because that really is how they are in life. You very rarely see one without the other.
And some of the ways I would describe my father being a father, it's the same way I would describe my mother, because I feel like they have taken on the role to be our guides in this life, as a very sacred duty.
One of the joint characteristics that they both share, because they're a team, is just phenomenal stewards of time. They did more with the time they had in a day than anyone, and that was a lesson that I try to emulate, right? And they just did more with time, and they spent quality time, and we were always together, and it was happy. It was happy, and honestly, you know, one of the statements my dad always says, but my mom says too, is we have sufficient for our needs. And it's an important statement because money doesn't bring us happiness, and we had enough. We had enough, and we didn't take it for granted. We had to work. We had to make the extra dollar mowing lawns, whatever it might be, because we didn't have extra. But what a blessing to not have more than sufficient for your needs, and to have to plan and be together and depend on each other. And
the greatest lesson we can learn from Frank and Ella and their life experience is their loyalty to the Lord and their loyalty to family. They put all of us before them. That's not easy to do.
When you talk about cleaving unto your spouse and being loyal, that is Frank and Ella. No spaces. That's who they are. They love deeply one another. And because they know that however strong they are together, their family will be stronger for it. And so I never questioned that my dad loved my mom or that my mom loved my dad. Because my dad would walk through the door, first person he looked for was my mom. He would go and give her a kiss hello, and he would yell out, "Your favorite dad is home." Those are ingrained in my memory. Favorite dad's home, and then he'd say, "Where's mom?" And he'd go and find her and give her a kiss and say hello. And to have that example of just love and loyalty is really important for a kid.
Until I met Ella, there was a loneliness and a friendship, loyalty that was missing in my life. The greatest blessing, besides the gospel, which is the same thing, is the day you walked in the pink blouse with the buckle on its back. It was just not a love affair that started, Ella. It's the day-to-day laughter, confidence, love, kindness. I can't believe, Ella, that we can be together forever. I mean, that's a long time. But it's heavenly choreography, as I've overstated many times. To wake up in the morning and you're there. To come home from work and you're there. I don't know how more to express how grateful I am for the choreography that brought us together. I love you with all my heart. And you sure are a good kisser.
Wow. From the first time I met him, I realized that he was special. He was such a gentleman, so kind, so fun, so funny, so spiritual. And every day I grew to love him more. And every day for the last really 67 years since we first met, my love has grown every day more deeply. He treats me like I'm the most beautiful thing in the world. We know that isn't true, but anyway, always a compliment, always thanks me for dinner or whatever I do, little things for him. First to say thanks, first to make sure we have prayer morning and night, lunch, dinner, jokes about if you haven't said a prayer over the food, you're going to have a stomach ache because your stomach hurt you. Always the joke, always the happy guy. He is an extension of my father, who was so loving and kind. Great sense of humor. It's been a great, great journey together. And like he said, we're going to be together forever. And our love will keep growing. And couldn't love him more. Every day's a bonus, like he says. Mr. Santiago, I do love you.
Igualmente.